Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Patrick Boyle and today we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of real options. So the real options valuation approach is a method that's used in finance. It's a bit of a new idea where we take a lot of the ideas that are used in options valuation and we use them to price non-financial options. So by that I mean the corporate decisions that can be made that may have an option-like payoff in certain ways, but they're not actually options. So they're not calls and puts. They might be, we'll say for example, a project that you're deciding whether you should go ahead with or not. So real options analysis applies options valuation techniques to analysing decisions such as whether to invest in a new project, whether to downside or whether to expand internationally. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. First we'll talk a bit about the traditional approaches. So there's a bunch of traditional approaches that have been taken in the past and that are, when I say taken in the past, they are still used and they're very good methods to deciding whether to go ahead with a project or not. So one example of that might be the payback rule. Now this isn't a really great approach, but it is something that some people do use, and it essentially involves looking at how many periods management have to wait until the cash flows of the new business cover the cost of the investment. So as you can imagine, sometimes that's attractive to people because they want to know how quickly they'll get their money back, but it's not really the best way of evaluating a project, simply because even though you get your money back, we're not really paying any attention to the cash flows that come after that point, and obviously they're quite important. You wouldn't want to invest just in a project where you get your money back, but after that it doesn't do anything to generate any wealth for you or your investors. Another approach is the accounting rate of return, which is the ratio of the average forecast profits over the project's lifetime after depreciation and tax to the average book value of the investment. And then finally we have net present value, which is the difference between the present value of projected cash inflows and the present value of projected cash outflows. So that's probably one of the better approaches. It helps us to model how the project will pay off, and that's a pretty good approach, and that's a widely used approach. Now, what we're trying to say in this video, or with this idea of real options, is that you can add a different approach. Now, that doesn't mean that you throw out the old approaches. It simply means that you have an additional arrow in your quiver. So you have an additional model that you're able to use that will hopefully help you make a better decision. So, what's wrong with the traditional models? Well, they're all useful, but some are not great when your estimate of future cash flows is based on a lot of assumptions about what the future might hold. In such cases, the odds of being right are low. So a real world thing with almost any analysis that you're going to do, it's not so crazy to think that you'll be wrong, right? You're going to open a new restaurant and you're projecting the cash flows. Odds are that you'll probably be wrong about actual project cash flows, but that doesn't mean that the analysis is so deeply flawed, because often you're just comparing one investment to another, and the most attractive one might still be the most attractive in the real world, even if you were off in your expected cash flows. But what the real option approach does is it just gives us another way of looking at this. And so instead of using the really standard approaches like saying, here are our projected cash flows and we're going to present value them, what it says is that we're able to analyze this whole project from just a totally different perspective, and maybe there's some value associated with that. So what kind of things are real options or real decisions that we're able to price using this method? Well, we've got ideas like you could delay making the investment. That's a real decision that a manager might make. We have things like adjusting production schedules as prices change, and that's something that happens a lot in real world businesses. For example, you looked at an oil field business. If the price of oil goes up, you might want to pump more oil, and if the price of oil goes down, you might want to wait until the price of oil recovers in order to start extracting it again. So that's a very real life thing. What else could we have? Well, you also have the real life option of abandoning the investment if the outcomes are unfavorable at early stages. And that happens a lot with business investments as well. So for example, you might have a big business, we'll say like a Starbucks or something like that, a big coffee chain, and they decide they want to diversify into other restaurant type businesses. So we'll say, for example, if they decide they want to open a hamburger chain, for example, just to make it sort of easy. And they might do a lot of analysis. They might come up with a style of restaurant and, for example, maybe just open 5 or 6 of them. We'll say they open 5 of them in Seattle and they see if they work or not. If they do work, then they might roll it out and open them nationally and internationally. If it doesn't work out, they might just close those 5 restaurants and find another investment opportunity. So that's very option-like, that kind of idea. So options are contingent decisions. They give an investor the opportunity to make a decision after they've seen how events unfold. And so that, our regular calls and puts, you get to put down a certain amount of money. You then get to see whether the market moves in your favor or not. And should it move in your favor, maybe then you exercise the option. And so there are other business decisions that are a lot like that. And if you see a business decision like that, it may not be unreasonable for you to use this real options approach to try and decide whether it's a good investment or not. So, when can you use this approach? Well, there usually has to be a clearly defined underlying asset whose value changes over time in unpredictable ways. The payoffs on this asset, which we're calling our real option, have to be contingent on a specified event occurring within a finite period. So we have to basically have an option-like payoff, and we have to be able to tie down certain things like the expiration date, the volatility, and basically all of the inputs that would go into an options pricing formula. So this approach works for promising but uncertain projects. So in our example I just gave of Starbucks opening a burger chain, for example, that might be a reasonable type of business decision that you could possibly model using this real options approach. Now, a much more linear business decision, we'll say, for example, if you owned a hotel business and your hotel has 100 rooms and you said, well, I'm gonna add an extra 3 rooms on the top of the hotel and hopefully that will be profitable. That's not really option-like because you spend the entire amount on building those rooms and then they either sell or they don't based on supply and demand in the area that you have your hotel. So we wouldn't really try and model that up using real options analysis, but there are other business decisions that are maybe a little bit more option-like that it makes sense to do that with. So what are the inputs? Well, the underlying is of course the project itself. The spot price of the underlying is the NPV of the project right now. The volatility we're going to have to derive from a substitute, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The strike is any non-recoverable investment outlays, and the expiration is the time during which the management may decide to act or not to act. And we're usually going to model these as American options rather than European options, simply because usually management are able to early exercise these decisions. Now, if you find one where it's not reasonable to think that management can early exercise, well then maybe you can model it as a European option. So anyhow, back to volatility. So where do we get the volatility for this? We'll go back to that idea of Starbucks opening a hamburger restaurant. One way that they could get an estimate of volatility would be to look at other publicly traded hamburger restaurants and see what the volatility of their stock prices are, and that might be a reasonable input as volatility within our real options pricing model. Now, there's a few other things. We'll say, for example, if you had a trickier problem than a hamburger restaurant, we'll say if you ran a pharmaceutical company and you were looking at launching a new drug that might cure a particular illness and decide whether to go ahead with that project or not, based upon a real options analysis. Well, you'd then have to derive some sort of substitute for the volatility from somewhere else. So you could look at the volatility of other similar projects that you've done in the past, because in the past you've probably done some R&D on medicine, some of which worked out, some of which didn't. You could use the data from those businesses to see what implied volatility it's reasonable to use. Or we'll say, for example, if it was a very particular drug, we'll say if it was an arthritis drug, you might find another pharmaceutical company out there whose main drug that they sell is an arthritis drug, and you might use that as an input for the volatility of the market for arthritis medications. That is really how we're going to have to work with volatility here. So as you can see, this isn't perfect. It's not like pricing a call option on a well-known underlying. We have to make a number of leaps here, and we have to kind of stretch some of the ideas that we're using from our options pricing models in order to get a reasonable number out of this. And there are problems, of course, associated with that, but equally it is still useful. It's the beauty of this approach is not necessarily that it's a perfect approach or that it'll give us a better price than our traditional approaches. It's really just that we're approaching the problem from a totally different angle. And so almost the information that you collect in order to make this decision is quite different to the usual type of information you collect in building, let's say, a DCF model, that it forces you to ask yourself different questions about the business and how it's likely to go in the future. In doing that work, you're coming up with different ideas that might be useful to you. So I'm not saying that this approach is better than the traditional approaches. I'm just saying that it's different, and approaching a problem from two different approaches is often useful. You learn additional things about what it is that you're trying to do. So problems with this approach, and of course there are problems. One is that it can overestimate the value of uncertain projects, right? Now, let's think a little bit about this. Assuming this isn't the first of my videos that you've watched, you know a little bit about implied volatility. If not, I'll put a link to a video on that above. But one of the problems with using this approach is that if we took a project that we thought was particularly uncertain, and of course we would represent the uncertainness of that project in the volatility that we use, and the problem is that the higher the volatility you use in pricing an option, the more it will tell you that option is worth. And of course that's kind of problematic, right? Because you don't want to just always be picking the craziest projects because your model tells you that uncertainty adds value. So we always have to, we don't just use our financial models willy-nilly. We always try and think about what the inputs are that are going into our models and what kind of outputs they're likely to generate. And so we don't just blindly follow the answer a model gives us. We think about what's causing the answer to come from the data that we've put in. Other problems with this approach is that it requires a lot of simplifying assumptions, and that's very obvious, I imagine. As you're listening to me describe this, you're probably coming up in your head with a bunch of sort of obvious problems with the simplification that is being applied to this problem. But in the truth, almost any financial plan involves oversimplifying a problem. If you're going to project cash flows, for example, you are using a lot of simplifying assumptions because it's just not very easy to perfectly project cash flows or to perfectly come up with volatilities and other things for pricing an option. Other issues is it can be hard to find good proxies for the input variables. That's true, but once again, the good thing about this approach is that it requires you to be creative and to think about the project from a different angle. The time period used in the calculation can be problematic, and that's very much the case because, as we can see in the real world, the expiration date might come on the option, but the management might say, well, let's just hold out another 6 months, 12 months, 3 years before we make our actual decision. So that kind of is a problem. And so finally, much like every other model in finance, it suffers from that garbage in, garbage out problem, in that if you're putting in assumptions that don't make an awful lot of sense, you're going to get an output. You're going to come up with a price that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So you always have to be careful with that in using real options, but also in using pretty much any financial model that you'll find yourself using. Okay, so in conclusion, the real options approach is quite useful with very uncertain projects, and in truth any valuation model that you use is going to be wrong. It's really just about comparing projects to each other. So if you have 5 projects that you're considering and you use the same approach to pricing all of them, maybe it'll still help you to make a reasonable decision. The real benefit, I would say, that comes from using the real options approach is that it adds an additional useful tool when combined with other approaches. So I would never say you use this approach on its own. I would say that you always combine it with other more traditional approaches. And so I get the feeling a lot of the people who are watching these videos are quite young and university students who are maybe a little bit new to finance. And the great thing about this idea of real options is that it's kind of a newish approach to pricing projects or to project evaluation. And so if you are young and you're knowledgeable about derivatives and how they're priced, this is a way that you can add value in your workplace. You can sit down and use an approach that a lot of the people who've been there a long time won't have heard of and might be surprised by your sophistication as a junior within the department. So hopefully this sparks a few ideas in your head. Like I said, it's not the perfect approach, but it is a thing that people are doing nowadays. It's useful and interesting, and if you want to read more about this or other derivatives ideas, you can read about it in my book, which is called Trading and Pricing Financial Derivatives. It's available on Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk, and I've put a link to the book in the description below. I hope you found this useful. Let me know what you think about the real options model. Do you think it's useful? Do you think it's utterly useless? Tell me in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear what you think. If you've used it, tell me about when you used it and how well it worked out. Talk to you guys later, and don't forget to like this video. You've made it to the end, so you have to. And please subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this on YouTube. Have a great day. Bye.